A viral post from the DC bureau chief of The Intercept, Ryan Grim, shows me that the left doesn't truly understand how things work and exist and how labor works. But I do think it's fair to give some credit to Mr. Ryan Grim. He makes a good point about the cost of medicine, but fundamentally misunderstands market economics. We have serious problems with medicine in the United States, don't get me wrong, but I got to point out some economic principles to these individuals. I also want to point out that, actually, let me read this tweet for you so I can start explaining to you what's going on. Ryan Grim tweeted, 5-year-old woke up with a fever. CVS Minute Clinic says she has the flu. Prescribes Tamiflu. It's the new year, so the new deductible kicks in. Pharmacy wants $198 for the Tamiflu. If we didn't have it, like millions don't, she would go without it, putting her life at risk. Barbaric. He then shows the post, $198.82. No, it's not barbaric. I'm sorry, it's not. Tamiflu in the past has been price gouged. I'll show you this in a minute. So I want to make sure I give credit to Ryan Grim. I understand. I understand the point. It's horrifying that your kid could be sick and they're going to be like, if you can't afford it, your kid dies. What's the cost of a human life versus the medicine required to give the kid that medicine, right? There's also a problem of some things don't exist. What if your kid woke up and had spinal viral meningitis? And you went and they were like, kid's got spiral meningitis. You need an interferon treatment. That's going to cost you a lot of money. Well, there's no pill you can take to cure that. Is it barbaric that the medicine doesn't exist? And it doesn't. So we'll go through this. But I also want to point out something else. I'm not surprised Anna Kasparian of the Young Turks says, oh my God, this system is disgusting. Hope she gets well soon. Happy New Year. I'm also not surprised that a bunch of journalists are also chiming in with the left-wing narrative. Dave Weigel of the Washington Post, I believe he's still at the Washington Post. Yeah, he is. Says, why do you hate choice and freedom? Sarcastic, right? And there's a few other, journalists, who are chiming in. It's no surprise because we know journalists are left. That's just the majority of them. So it's no surprise they don't understand the function of market economics. But again, I'm more moderate on this position. There's a couple things I want to point out. You don't need to buy name brand Tamiflu. Okay, it's $198. I get it. The pharmacy wants the money. I hate to say it, but you do have to save, to the best of your abilities. I also recognize that some people can't, and I do think we need to figure out how to reform the whole, medical industry. And admittedly, I'm on the side that says I don't believe corporations should turn profits on medicine and medical treatments. Now, let me stop you right there. There's a difference between low-tier profit and corporate profit. Okay, let me explain this. If you own your own business and you sell widgets, it's a fictional object, and a widget costs $10 and you sell it for $20, you make a $10 profit for yourself. That pays you. That I get. But there is a different perception when it comes to corporate profits because the CEO's salaries are guaranteed with or without profits. Now, profits do get split up for shareholders, and there's a lot of things like that. I kind of think we shouldn't do that. I really don't. I think we should try and minimize the costs to the best of our abilities. The challenge then becomes, and I recognize this, even though I am a little left on this situation of medicine, the challenge becomes how do you invest? How do you convince people to invest capital into the development of new treatments, cures, etc.? If there's not going to be a profit for the shareholders, people aren't going to want to engage with it for the most part. But there's probably still a solution here. I have a concern that Ryan's kid was facing a price gouging situation. Tamiflu can be bought online, a generic version, for a lot less. And I looked this up. So the generic version is oseltamivir, generic Tamiflu, and presumably I think you can get it cheaper. I don't know how you buy it on the internet. I don't know if you can, but there's seriously cheaper versions of it than just getting the name brand version. I think it's fair to point out price gouging is real. And if that's their focus, then I give it to them. You are correct. It is barbaric. However, what people don't seem to realize in this healthcare debate, actually, I'll talk about healthcare in a second. I do want to be fair as possible and point this out. Just cursory research, antiviral Tamiflu drug price varies wildly. Back in 2009, it was reported that there was massive price gouging of Tamiflu. So I'm not trying to be mean to Grim. I feel for his kid, and I think he's got a good point to make. But I'm only using this as an example to talk about the cost of healthcare, technology, advancement, development, investment, and the problems of Medicare for all, which we'll get to in a second. In response to this story of these massively varying prices, which people said was price gouging, we saw this. I don't know what the source is. This is from 2009 Consumerist. CVS and Walgreens drop Tamiflu prices after AG sends nasty letter. They ask, are CVS and Walgreens price gouging on liquid Tamiflu? The Attorney General of Connecticut's office says the AG, Richard Blumenthal, has received information suggesting that some pharmacies have charged substantially increased out-of-pocket prices for Tamiflu, in some cases as high as $130 or more. Now, I want to point something out. Based on the prices I found online, I think you're going to pay a brand premium, okay? Yeah, if there's a company doing advertisements for the antiviral, you're going to pay a premium for that company. They got employees, right? You've also got to pay for the overhead of the store. So yes, online prices and generic prices will be cheaper. It doesn't seem to me that what we're facing is price gouging. The prices 10 years ago were half this. You've got to account for inflation. And this is what brings me to the bigger point about how the left doesn't understand how things are made. Listen, I don't want your kid to die. And I think to a certain degree, the $198 Tamiflu, if it's going to save your life, is worth substantially, it's worth it. Okay, we got to figure out how we can solve this problem. The problem is supply and demand and access to resources. If your kid comes in, I'm sick, I have the flu, I'm going to die, seriously, give him the medicine. Okay, the life of a human being is priceless. There's no value to it. I mean, I guess if you're going by black market prices, it's something like, depending on the ethnicity, between like $100,000 to even like $1 million. But that's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is, I'll quote Dr. Manhattan from Watchmen, the Watchmen comic, when he says that of all of the things in the universe, of all the probabilistic chains, everything finally led to one thing, you. And he was talking to, I can't remember the woman's name. He's basically saying that the likelihood that you exist is astronomical. It's winning 50 million lottery tickets all back to back to back. You are unique beyond, anything. So if we can take $200, save your life, I think we should do it. However, I always got to throw that however in. First, the store has employees. Someone had to manufacture the drug. Someone had to invest in making the drug. Someone had to think, I'm going to be rewarded by society for making this drug, thus I will do it. Some people, like, Salk, who did the polio vaccine, didn't patent it because his reward was, society loving him. But we got a serious problem as our trust in each other and our culture breaks down. With no shared culture, the only thing that drives people is money, and there's actually Pew data to show this. I was going to show it in my earlier segment. It didn't come up, but people are being more and more driven by money. So how do we develop a maybe you have the flu, we want to cure it outright. We want to literally find a cure for the virus, which I believe we don't really have. We have cures for bacterial infections, not viral infections. How do we do that? Well, somebody wants to know that if they invest their time and energy, something will come back. We can actually make this sustainable. Not just that, but sometimes when there's profit, that money goes into a savings or into investment funds so that it can either be saved for a rainy day so your company doesn't go under, or so that, you can develop new drugs. Price gouging exists. But there's a big difference between medicine being expensive and barbaric price gouging. So I'll put it this way. There's a way I've explained it before. Imagine there's literally no cure for a disease. Are you going to complain? Are you going to call it barbaric? Let's say they went into the store and says, my kid has, floorbow disease. And they're going to be like, well, no one's ever cured floorbow disease, so I'm sorry, your kid's going to die. Are they going to say, barbaric, I blame the store? No. The medicine's not available. It's no one's fault. So this is the problem when it comes to Medicare for all. What people don't seem to understand is that certain treatments will never be available to the general population because they're rare, new, hard to make, expensive. Perhaps there is a rare flower that grows only in the deserts of the lost city of, Florbo. just use the word again. Like, I'm just saying a hypothetical city. And they find this new, rare, endangered plant, and it has these properties. They try to replicate in a lab, and it costs tens of millions of dollars. And they finally synthesize just 10 cures for Florbo disease. Who's going to get it? Who's going to be able to pay the $20 million or whatever it costs to make this? That's the problem. Just like any other technology, there has to be development towards mass production to reduce costs in medication. And because the demand only circles around people who actually have the disease, you're not going to see mass production in the hopes that people can sell the product. Not only that, there's shelf life to medication. People know there's a demand for TVs, so they just keep on making TVs, but the demand for the drug only exists so long as someone has the disease or the symptoms, in which case we're not going to see a dramatic mass production of a medication which can expire if 1 in 100 million people end up getting the disease. That's the challenge. So if you end up getting an extremely rare disease that only 1 in 100 million people get, no one's invested in developing that because nobody really gets it. This is the challenge, man. I think what we can do when it comes to Medicare for all or some kind of universal health care is base level. If you break your arm, if you break your leg, if you slip a disc, if there's simple surgical procedures for curing you, stitches and other things like that, I think that's fair. I think even to a certain extent when it comes to things like the flu. But what about when you get cancer or some really rare degenerative disease? Things start getting much more difficult because the medication and the treatments just literally don't exist. It's not about being barbaric. It's about making sure you're not literally enslaving people. So I'll tell you this. A lot of people seem to think healthcare is a human right. I'm sorry, it's not. Because healthcare requires someone else to perform a job. Period. We do get base level care when it comes to the fire department, the police department. So I think there's a way to implement base level care with, medical treatment, but not to a certain degree. You break your leg, you wait in line, and maybe in a few hours someone will treat you. But if you get a rare disease that requires CAT scans and MRIs, the line would be just out the door and no one would be treated and you'd be on a 6-month wait list suffering with the disease. Perhaps that's what the left wants, okay? I know the left really wants everyone to be treated. I'm just saying, you have to recognize there will be lines. Not everybody can be cured. There's not enough MRI machines for literally everybody who needs it. It sounds cold. It sounds callous. We don't want people to die. But guess what? We haven't conquered death yet. And that means until we do, it takes someone else's time, energy, and labor to implement cures and medication. I don't think the left gets it. I think the left has this vision of like the movie Elysium. You ever see the movie? Where like the rich people had a cure for literally everything, but just never shared it with the poor people for literally no reason. It's not how it works. And then they like invade the space station and just start putting people in the machines like everybody could have been cured if the rich people just let them. No. It's finite resources, man. Finite access. And somebody has to do the labor. You can't force someone at gunpoint to work for you. Healthcare can't be a human right if that's the case. But we can provide communal base level coverage for simple things. Perhaps if you're sick, you should be able to go to the doctor without worrying about a bill. Now, whether or not they can treat you and cure you is a different story. Base level coverage, maybe it's something like this. You wake up, your kid's sick, you bring her to the doctor, and they say your kid's got the flu. No charge. The medication, there will be a charge. I don't know. You get the point. I'll leave it there. Thanks for hanging out. Stick around. Next segment's coming up tomorrow at 10 a.m. at youtube.com/timcast. I may only have one segment because I got to fly, but I'll do my best. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all tomorrow at 10 a.m. youtube.com/timcast or podcast every day at 6:30 on all podcast platforms. Adios.